folks, welcome to race number 7 of the Bwoah Racing League Season 7, and we are heading to Belgium, to the fabulous circuit of Spa, which is very popular amongst drivers and even folks who watch Formula 1, and much to a lot of the folks here in the Bwoah Racing League and in Roadrunner Racing. And of course, we've got a relatively smaller grid, which is unfortunate. Nevertheless, it's a different kind of weekend as we head to Spa. It's a sprint weekend, and sprint weekends in the Bwoah Racing League is relatively different. We got one-shot qualifying, which you get to see on our screens, where we will tend to the lap time soon enough, followed by a sprint race, which will then be followed by a 50% race distance race. We got a couple of rookies, believe it or not, amongst the 5 drivers who are out on track. But it's Levi Tiger Pants who nails one-shot qualifying and will start on pole for the sprint race. Of course, the sprint race will dictate the order ahead of the main race itself. That's how it goes here in the Bwoah Racing League. And as always, folks, if you're new here, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're interested in taking part, as you can see, we run a tight ship of sorts. Our social media game's relatively on point. We live stream our races with commentary, so feel free to jump in, fill up the grid. Gone are the days where we had full racing grids. That was back in season 4, season 5. Consistently had not only a full racing grid but also reserve drivers on the day, on the weekly. But yeah, we race here in the Bwoah Racing League every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. IST, considering we are taking into account daylight savings from this weekend onwards. So don't forget to tune in if you're a spectator, and don't forget to jump in if you're a competitor yourself. Might as well see what you can bring to the table, and if you can beat some of the veterans here in the Bwoah Racing League. And of course, you can make a name for yourself. Statistics are accounted for every race. Podium matters, wins matter, pole positions matter, fastest laps matter, everything kept track of. But yeah, we head to the sprint race itself, and hopefully folks can hear me loud and clear and watch the race itself loud and clear. Oh, there we go. Might have heard 2 of me for a moment. Nevertheless, 3 of you all watching, appreciate it. Last race was an interesting one, where we had in the same amount of concurrent viewers as much as we had drivers on the grid. Now, ahead of the sprint race itself, drivers will be looking forward to give it their everything, as you'd expect from any sprint race. Soft tires on everybody. No, don't expect a pit stop at all unless there's an incident of sorts. I know what you're thinking. Zetaxter, 5 drivers are there on track, right? 5 cars are on track. What are the odds of an incident happening? But trust me, this is the Bwoah Racing League, and it's not to say that there's any sense of bad racing that unravels on your screens or out on the virtual tracks, but let's just say anything can happen in any race for that matter. And I think heading into turn 1 in Bwoah Racing League, you could expect a little bit of wheel bumping and whatnot. Nevertheless, I hope we don't have any kind of issue right now holding us up, because I'm actually on the edge of my seat, as I am most of the time for races that I get behind the mic for, particularly Bwoah Racing League, considering they're lads who I frequently spend time with. Talking shop about Formula 1, talking shop about sim racing. And of course, if you got any kind of prediction for this 5-car grid here as the 5 lights come out, this is the time to drop it in the chat. But 5 lights are on and out, and just like that, who gets the better start is Levi on pole position. We to the left hand side of the track and into turn 1. The Aston Martin of Faizan getting his elbows out quite a bit, and that might have just costed Envy, and it has a position. But he's not a sitting duck to Sicknick, who's not too far behind. Big Man Joe as well, running P5. I believe he switched to the controller not to the controller. He will be switching to the controller soon enough. But a spectacular opportunity for someone like Levi Tiger Pants, who's pulled off a second's gap while Faizan got his elbows out up against Envy. Envy now on top of the gearbox of that Aston Martin. And he's going to be trying to edge himself closer in this sprint race and try to pick off Faizan. Of course, we've seen a similar gap being opened up between Envy and Sicknick. Forget that. Forget a similar gap to that of Levi, Tiger Pants and Faizan. It's an even more bigger gap, and it's opportunity for Big Man Joe, who's running P5 now. He's within a second of Sicknick, so we can expect battles between the Red Bull and the Alfa Romeo soon enough. Weaving to get some heat in his tires, I reckon, Sicknick, but he is struggling. He is struggling a lot. But you can already see Big Man Joe has closed that gap, a second's gap, which is now mere 2/10 and a tenth. So with the aid of DRS and all the good stuff, as you'd imagine, he's going to close in and close in. He will. He peeks down the inside. He knows a fumble from Sicknick can hand him the position rather easily, and seemingly he will wait. It is the sprint after all. He's got the time in his favor, and there's got about 7 laps of racing left, but into the pits both go. So clearly with one end plate missing, which I might have just missed, Big Man Joe with one end plate missing, that made a lot of sense. But into turn 1, Envy once again losing traction at the exit of turn 1, and at the pits we've got an Alfa Romeo and Red Bull facing off. New set of tires, I'd imagine, new front wing as well. Damage limitation pretty much for the two drivers at the back of the field, of this tiny field. But Faizan and Envy pulling each other and closing in on Levi Tiger Pants, or at least attempting to. That seconds gap is now beyond a second, 1.5 now, mind you. Okay, a bit too off track for anybody's liking there for Envy. Let's quickly jump back to the back of the field, of this tiny field. Considering Big Man Joe headed into the pits behind Sicknick, he is half a second off of him, and he'll be looking to close that gap. And I do see a battle spewing clearly for both P4 as well as P2 for that matter up in front, but somehow Faizan is seemingly pulling away. Half a second's gap now down to over 8 tenths or so to Envy. So I'm going to stay on board Big Man Joe as he tries to close this gap to Sicknick, who isn't struggling anymore as you'd expect. I believe there was an incident between these two as well. Big Man Joe was missing an end plate, and Sicknick might have had damage to his front wing, considering they both did head into the pits. But DRS is enabled, so now Envy and Big Man Joe, sitting within DRS range, will be thinking to themselves, now is when I make the move. Now we can just see Big Man Joe closing in with all that speed as you'd reckon, but still he's waiting, he's biding his time, and I believe Envy is doing something similar up in front. 2 tenths now. Okay, closing in, weaves to the right hand side of the track, and on that straight in sector 1 makes the pass cheekily down the inside. Says thank you very much Faizan, I'll be well on my way up in a P2, and his next target is clearly Levi Tiger Pants, and I'd like to see him open up a gap, but Faizan's not too far behind, is he? He's well within attacking range. Now Big Man Joe, similar part of the track, we see the right hand side of the track well before a hand where Envy made the move, and Sicknick's pretty much sitting duck for that move, and we'll have to tuck behind Big Man Joe for his slipstream and for DRS soon, and try to replicate that move Big Man Joe pulled off on him. Now as it stands, Levi, having started on pole position in this sprint race, leads this sprint race, and Envy is 2.5 seconds off of Levi. So that gap, he's got 5 laps to close that gap. I don't see that happening in all honesty, but let's just assume that it does for the sake of some racing action. And Faizan's not too far behind, is he? But right behind, and they're within view. Would you look at that? So quickly, just you can see the two drivers, Envy and Faizan, far off into the back. But yeah, this is where they can attempt to switcheroo, right? The drivers who have lost positions on the last lap. Not the greatest of exits for Envy, and neither does Faizan get a spectacular one, but that gap has remained the same. Impressive gap extended by Big Man Joe and Sicknick. A second almost, or over a second. But yeah, opportunity now. Faizan closing in. Envy pulled off that fantastic move last time out. This time out, Faizan's going to make it look even more easier. But Envy doesn't let go without a fight. But into the next corner. It's going to be the Aston Martin in the lead. Oh, almost going into the back of the Aston Martin, the Envy, and he wants it badly. Sector 1 lights up yellow briefly, and that is a singular incident for Sicknick by himself. And I believe he has not lost his end plate, so he'll hopefully continue this race. But pretty much a gift of sorts for Big Man Joe. He doesn't have to worry about a competitor coming his way anytime soon. It does seem like Envy is seemingly struggling in certain parts of this track. Oh, the rear kicks out for Envy once again. Apologies, I wanted to mention Faizan in particular, but I think with both drivers, they're losing traction in the same parts of the track. But clearly, once again, opportunity now. Envy being that car with slipstream, and arguably might just around the outside, perhaps not. Sector 2 lights up yellow. And who's that? That is Sicknick once again with incident by himself. And on the main straight, Envy's so close that into turn 1, he might just die down the inside like Faizan did, but he prefers not to. He's going to tuck right behind the Aston Martin, lose a bit of traction out of turn 1. Doesn't matter, still within range. A 10th. Make that 2, perhaps not, almost pushing the Aston Martin through Eau Rouge, and he's going to stay and tuck right behind that gearbox and line up alongside and make that pass look smooth as butter. Up in a P2 once again, Envy. So these two drivers have been battling it out behind Levi Tiger Pants, and that gap was extended well beyond 3.5 seconds, almost 4 seconds. So he's gonna have a smirk on his face. He'll be starting, by the looks of it, on lap number 5 on pole position. But let's not call anything too soon, shall we? Anything can happen in a matter of a couple of laps. We've seen that historically here in the Bwoah Racing League. And folks watching, make sure you drop your predictions, if anything, the wackiest ones, if anything. Heading into the tail end of this sprint race. 8 laps of sprints. Not enough laps for Sicknick to have a clean race. Clearly, oh, he's doing donuts, ladies and gentlemen. He is treating you to some moves on track. Different kind of moves in Sector 1. But yeah, he's been having a tough couple of races, hasn't he? Last race in Monaco, not his best outing at all. Damage that cost him quite a bit in the race itself, and right now in the sprint at the very least, it's not going his way one bit, is it? Back to the battle up in front, Faizan and Envy. These two have been going at it from lap number 1 into turn 1. The advantage clearly went the way of Faizan. He got his elbows out pretty well. Some would argue that dive down the inside was not the cleanest of moves. While that may be, Envy came back as you would expect from someone who's a champion of the Bwoah Racing League in the past. But right now, once again, on lap number 6, Faizan's gonna have the advantage, pushes him, edges him a bit over onto the grass there, Envy. So he's getting his elbows out pretty well as well. And by the looks of it, they've clearly traded positions lap after lap. So as it stands, let's assume on lap number 7, Envy gets him once again. And that means lap number 8, Faizan will be ahead once again. Now this is probably a good time to look at the ERS levels of both drivers, and clearly you can see Envy's at a significant advantage. These passes Faizan had to make pretty early on cost him quite a bit of ERS, and he'll be looking to conserve it. So the next move Envy makes on Faizan will be a relatively easier one, I'd reckon, and Faizan won't even attempt to defend the move. But going into lap number 8, the final lap, he'll be looking to keep the gap as small as possible to Envy running in P3. And maybe I'm getting more analytical and getting ahead of myself here, because with battles come chaos at times, some would say. At least with Sicknick, he's been chaotic by himself, which is unfortunate to see. But right now, let's concentrate on Faizan and Envy. This sprint race has been all about them, and it's going to be all about them as they begin their penultimate laps. Let's not forget, folks, Levi Tiger Pants, having started on pole position, leads this race comfortably as his two competitors behind him battle it out for P2. Moment of truth, once again, last time out Envy was almost pushing this Aston Martin through this part of the track, and this time around it's a similar sight. Not the right hand side this time, but the left hand side as he weaves and has the aid of DRS to follow. Makes that pass, and you can see how Faizan quickly tuck right behind the Alpha Tauri. Get a little bit of slipstream to ensure the gap stays the same, because he's going to be trying his best to conserve ERS to the maximum capability of himself, and as it stands, Faizan will have to bide his time, at least in this lap, to try and even remotely attempt to move. And as I say that, on sector 3, that is sickening, calling a day for this sprint race, calling it an end for his sprint race, and into sector 3 as Levi Tiger Pants enters it. I had reckoned we are going to get to see a glimpse of sickening. Of course, no safety car, thankfully. It is the penultimate lap. That would have been a bummer. Faizan is losing time to Envy. He's a half a second's gap to Envy. He has a half a second's gap to Envy, and Envy, with the advantage in ERS, he's going to conserve it as much as he can to defend Faizan, who will be looking to make a move in sector 1 come lap number 8. Now, that isn't rocket science, is it? We've seen these two trade positions time and time again, but for once, one of these drivers are at a disadvantage, and for the first time, it's not just any lap, it's the final lap of the sprint race. So this is all to play for, and you can already see Envy pulling away of sorts. He's extended that gap from half a second to 7/10 now, and Faizan trying to tap that ERS as much as he can to this section of the track onto Eau Rouge. He is going to deploy all the ERS he wants, but so does Envy. And with Envy's advantage with the ERS, Faizan's going to be left hanging behind and settling for that second row start come the main race. What? How strategic you can get. Level Envy, I'd say. But yeah, for of y'all watching, hasn't it been a treat? Unfortunate to see that we didn't get to see all 5 drivers cross the line. We won't be getting to see all 5 drivers cross the line. But would you look at that? In the sprint race itself, we've got drizzle. A bit of drizzle coming down onto the cars, onto the track itself. So a bit of rain into the mix, maybe perhaps even into the main race. But in this sprint race, if there was one driver who got clinical, it's got to be Levi Tiger Pants. All the other drivers tried their best as 3 of the cars enter into sector 3. Big Man Joe enters into sector 2. Now you can see that not really struggling, but the rear of the cars are kicking out quite a bit for some of these drivers. But with that, we've gotten 8 spectacular laps of a sprint race. We've lost Sicknig as he retired from the session. Across the final corner comes Levi Tiger Pants, nails the one-shot qualifying and wins the sprint race of Spa-Francorchamps here in the Bwoah Racing League Season 7. Envy, after losing that P2 to Faizan into turn 1 on lap number 1, he comes back fighting and clearly portrays how strategically he is at an advantage on track more often than not. Faizan will be starting on the second row, but guarantees himself a podium in the sprint race. Big Man Joe lines up on the second row as well, after making that pass on to Sicknick, who didn't quite have the greatest of outings here today once again. Hopefully the main race goes in his favor. He's got the challenge on his card. He's got the last to first challenge to do. And of course, with a 5-car grid, a last to first challenge is probably encouraged, if anything. Big Man Joe gets driver of the day in this sprint race. And with that, folks, we'll be heading into the main race of the Belgian GP of the Bwoah Racing League Season 7. We got Levi Tiger Pants starting on pole position. Envy on the front row. Faizan, Big Man Joe on second row, and Sicknig at the very back. Not too far behind is he. He starts in P5. Well, folks, if you're tuning in right now, it is the Belgian GP of the Bwoah Racing League Season 7. We got a relatively smaller grid than we usually do. We got 5 drivers out on track who have just wrapped up a fantastic sprint race. Now we head to the main race, the main event itself, 50% race distance race, if I'm not wrong. And we've got Levi Tigerpants, who's returned and put that car on pole. He is fighting for the championship this season, ahead of Envy, who's also a championship contender this season. And behind them is Faizan and Big Man Joe. Faizan, his first race in the Bwoah Racing League this season. Big Man Joe, contender for the championship once again. So these three are the ones to watch out for. While that is the case, at the back is Sicknig, starting from the way back in 5-car grid. Of course, he's had a rough couple of races. He'll be looking to improve in this one, considering this relatively smaller grid. As we wait for the drivers to confirm their strategies, confirm their choices of tires ahead of the race itself, probably a good time to drop any kind of prediction you might just have ahead of the race itself. I'm looking forward to this. I don't see a scenario where a safety car comes out, but by the looks of the weather, a bit cloudy perhaps, can we see a bit of rain into the second half of this race. There you have it, folks. It's 5 lights, and the 5 lights are out, and away we go. When you can see, Levi gets that stellar start once again, weaves to the left hand side of the track to fend off Envy, and down the inside Faizan comes once again, and this time Envy is prepared for it but loses the position nevertheless. But he tucks right behind the Aston Martin, so does Big Man Joe, not too far behind, and through Radion and Eau Rouge they go, and the advantage still in the hands of the Aston Martin driver, who's made his way up at a P2 into turn 1. Big Man Joe steaming into the rear of the Alpha Tauri, but not close enough to his liking. He's being patient as you'd expect, but Faizan closing in on that Williams. And you can see the Williams driver a bit shocked, I'm pretty sure, not been aggressively attacked in quite some time on track. Levi Tigerpants, he's got 22 laps of racing left, folks. We've just gotten underway with the race itself. And we got Levi Tigerpants ahead of Faizan, Envy, Big Man Joe, and Sicknick. And you can see how close Faizan is getting again and again. And this time around down the inside, he's gonna send it and up into P1 he goes. But can he keep it? Can he keep it? Levi Tigerpants not too far behind. Tucks right behind the Aston Martin for a bit of slipstream to have a bit of advantage heading into sector 3, as you would expect. And there's a big gap opening up, a considerably big gap opening up between the front 2 runners and the rest of the field. Levi Tigerpants coming back now for the position he's lost. Holding on, however, to the race lead, Faizan. He's made his way from P3 up in a P1 in a matter of a lap. Would you look at that? On his first race this season. And you can see they gotta get their exits spot on. And spot on he got it, Faizan. And he's pulling away ahead of Levi Tigerpants. And you can see a gap opening up now between the front 2 runners only, but the front 3 make that the front 3 and the 2 at the back. And closing in through Radion Eau Rouge once again. This time around Levi with the advantage perhaps. Tucks right behind the Aston Martin. Faizan weaves to the right hand side of the track to deny any kind of slipstream Levi might just get, but he aids Envy in the process, and down the inside goes the Alpha Tauri on the Williams, level pegging, almost bangs wheels, but sector 1 lights up purple for Envy, and this is a proper wheel-to-wheel battle between these two, and that opens up an opportunity for Faizan to pull off a gap between these two for himself. You can see that gap extending beyond a second, but he picks up a 3-second time penalty in the process. He's going to be bummed by that, wouldn't he? He will be disappointed. You can see the drivers, Levi Tigerpants and Envy, a bit more laid back now, knowing that Faizan has that 3-second time penalty after multiple warnings, a kind of time penalty that cannot be removed. He's gone to the limit. He's pushed that car to its limits on lap number 1, and that has cost him on some parts of this track. Levi Tigerpants, however, he's got a seconds gap to close in on Faizan. We've not seen Levi Tigerpants be in such a position in a while now. He's been the front runner so far. He's made the climbs, but he hasn't really struggled to close a gap, has he, in this season? 1 minute 45.789, the fastest lap time for Faizan as he continues to lead this race. We got DRS in play, folks, and we got 4 drivers in a DRS trainer, so it's all within a second of each other, barring Faizan and Levi Tigerpants having that enormous gap up in front. Now, what's to say Envy doesn't steam past Levi Tigerpants this time around? Last time he had that opportunity with the aid of Faizan. This time he's going to weave to the right hand side of the track, so down the inside once again, and makes the pass well before the corner, and up into P2 he goes. And he'll be looking to close that gap, and the gap has been closed considerably, I'd say. Faizan clearly struggling somehow while staying in the lead of the race. Maybe holding on to the lead of the race is not for everyone after all, but Envy's rear kicked out just a bit heading into sector 2, but he kept it on track. 2/10 the gap between himself and Levi Tigerpants as the race continues on lap number 3. You can see through certain corners Levi gets so close to the back of the Envy, and Envy took a trip too far off track for my liking at the very least, and it's cost him clearly, inviting Levi into a battle that might just go his way after all. Considering Envy might just be fumbling a bit too much through sector 3, you'd expect a driver to close in on a competitor, and close in he did. He's just looking at the gap, he's just waiting and watching. He is trying to pressure the Alpha Tauri driver into a mistake so he can get this pass done relatively easily. Oh, the rear kicks out a bit too much for his liking, and so does Sicknick's rear out of the final corner. He's not having the best of races once again, unfortunate for him. A bit too wide for Envy, and this time it's cost him a position. Who's gotten the better exit is Levi Tigerpants, and he is back up into P2. But through Radion and Eau Rouge, this might just have been tactical for Envy once again. Weaves to the right hand side of the track, bit too early perhaps for his liking. Has DRS to his aid. Big Man Joe not too far behind. A 3-way battle for P2 perhaps. Around the outside comes Big Man Joe. He peaks around the outside of the Alpha Tauri, but has to concede the position once again. And Levi Tigerpants remains in P2, but quite the battle is steaming up between these 3 heavyweights of the Bwoah Racing League. It's impressive Levi Tigerpants has managed to keep that gap between himself and Faizan to a second. So Faizan hasn't been having the best of times in the race lead, as I mentioned before. But he does have his hands full, doesn't he, Levi Tigerpants, with Envy and Big Man Joe not too far behind either. Envy, pushing to the limit as much as he can, particularly in sector 2. We've seen him gone way off track than usual on that part of the track. And Big Man Joe patiently waiting, patiently watching as well, keeping that gap within DRS range to ensure if there's an opportunity to come and Envy fumbles it just even a little bit, he's going to be right there to pick him off. Now, as you'd expect, being on the hard tires, Levi Tigerpants and Envy are in some sense racing the same race. Big Man Joe, however, on the medium tires, he's going to have a bit of advantage in the early parts of this race, the first half at the very least. And that advantage is clearly showing, much like it did for Faizan, who's been on the softs so far. And up in front, those softs might just be falling off little by little pretty early on, because closing in on the hard tires is Levi Tigerpants. This time around he peaks around the outside, much like big man Joe did onto Envy. Outside again, he likes to put his competitors in a position where it's do or die perhaps. But around the outside, he's gonna peek again and again. Let Faizan know, be all over his rearview mirrors, and let Faizan know that he's right there. He's on top of his gearbox, and he's waiting, and he's ready to pick him off at the second he fumbles. Faizan, however, he's done as much as he could on those soft tires. I don't think he's having the best of times up in front. You can see how close Levi gets, and you can see how much of a gap he's, opening up between himself and Envy, almost a second there as they went through sector 2. And while sector 3 is known for some brave moves by some of these drivers, I believe Levi is going to close in as much as he can and going to wait for the main straight. If not, Radion and Eau Rouge to follow. Around the outside, down the inside, he's just peeking. And they are giving it everything as they go through the penultimate and final corners on lap number 5. You can see who's got the better exit. It is Levi after all. Those sauce might just be falling off, or maybe Faizan is in conserving mode in terms of conserving those tires to last a bit longer than he had expected or he'd wanted, or any driver would want those sauce to last. But as they go through Radion and through Eau Rouge, around the outside, Levi's going to have it spot on, but here comes Envy to follow suit. He's going to get the slipstream. He's going to have the DRS as well. That is 2 positions lost, well ahead, and he might just fancy 3, and there is contact between the Alfa Romeo and the Aston Martin down the inside, peak big man Joe, and that might have just cost him quite a bit. Not in the attempt to get 1 position, he loses 1 instead, and Faizan, what a terrible moment for him. All the way from race lead down to P5 to the very back of the pack. The end plates on both cars seem intact, so I don't see why they'd be heading into the pits. Faizan just might be the first one to head into the pits, considering he has been struggling with those softs so far. Overall, we've seen in this, not only in this season, but even in the last season, drivers in general struggle with the softs. So heading into lap number 7 that's coming up. As we wrap up lap number 6, Levi Tiger Pants leads this race ahead of Envy, Sicknig, Big Man Joe and Faizan. And the race continues with only two drivers within a second of each other. As Levi Tiger Pants and Envy within a second of each other on the same strategy, of course, as you'd expect on the hard tires. Sicknig getting handed pretty much that position of P3 as Big Man Joe and Faizan came together on the last lap. And this time around, Envy closing in like a steamroller of sorts, and on the inside he's gonna get it spot on, but Levi's gonna come right on back as he gets a boshy exit through one of the corners. That might have just cost him the position. Around the outside once again, and now down the inside, Levi Tiger Pants comes right on back for the race lead, and he is going to hold on to that race lead this time around. Envy clearly, has met his match in some sense. If you could say anything about these two drivers, is that they're getting their elbows out properly, and we're seeing some spectacular, clean racing between these two front runners here at Spa-Francorchamps. The opportunity returns for Envy, doesn't it? Once again, same part of the track. Sector 1 is the name of the game for anyone following behind another car and has DRS. And he closes in once again. This time around, Levi, he's not going to leave it out easy, but Envy is going to get it easily regardless. So they're level pegging wheel to wheel only for a moment. Levi wheels to the right hand side of the track aggressively, trying to get behind Envy and tuck right behind us to get some slipstream ahead of the next sector. He knows Envy's fumbled this once before, and seemingly heading into sector 2, Levi's had that advantage, and the rear kicks out once again considerably as they head into sector 2 for Envy in particular. Yeah, not too far behind is he, not even half a second, mere 3/10 or so between these two drivers on lap number 8. It's anyone's guess what might unravel in the laps to come. The folks watching, make sure you drop in the chat any kind of prediction you might have for this race, because as it stands, it is as unpredictable as you could imagine, going terribly wide there. Envy out of sector 2, not having the greatest of exits on that particular corner. We just got to witness Envy's been struggling on that corner time and time again, but Envy once again threatened for position from Levi Tiger Pants well before the main straight itself. But Levi, I reckon he's going to continue to do what he's been comfortably doing for a while now, which is get as close as possible, add some pressure to the driver up in front, force them into a mistake of sorts, or at least get them trembling ahead of heading into sector 1, because sector 1 is really the play. It's the name of the game, as I mentioned. We're only on lap number 9, folks. We've seen this race lead switch between 3 drivers, not just 1, not just 2, but between 3 different drivers so far on lap number 9. Now, through Radion and Eau Rouge, and I can't say that enough times already in a race like this one, Levi Tiger Pants is seemingly happy with staying P2, so he's going to be conserving his ERS, trying to force Envy to spend his. You can see how close Levi gets as we're on board Envy. You can see, okay, so close to the AlphaTauri, and he couldn't make that pass on sector 1, but sector 2, Levi just thrives, doesn't he? He is all over his competitor up in front, like all over the rear view mirrors, and the gearbox itself almost goes into the back of the AlphaTauri there on that part of the track as you go through sector 2, but somehow doesn't run into the back of his competitor. The race continues, and you can see how closer and closer Levi gets, and it's an absolute treat to watch two competitors go toe to toe the way that they do in sector 2, especially these two drivers, Envy and Levi Tiger Pants. Now come the main straight, you'd reckon the one who gets the best exit out of the final corner is gonna have the advantage and make the pass on the other, but I'm gonna wait it out till sector 1. I have a feeling the moves to be made is right there. So let's hop back onto Levi Tiger Pants' POV. Of course, this battle's been ensuing for a while now. It's carried over from the sprint race itself around the outside, and now down the inside he peaks Levi all over the gearbox. Or the AlphaTauri might have just gotten a nastier exit than expected, or perhaps Envy somehow holding on to the race lead now, and a sitting duck pretty much, or a sloppy exit for the Williams means opportunity for Envy, or perhaps not, and everything is being deployed as you'd imagine. And on the outside comes the Williams Levi Tiger Pants at the exit sector 1. He will lead this race, and right behind is Big Man Joe, sending it down the inside of Sicknig to reclaim his P3 spot he had lost earlier on to Faizan, while battling Faizan, who has pitted in fact and come out on a fresh set of hard tires. Would you look at that? This is his first race this season. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the races to come. He's got about 12 laps, and I'd say never, considering knowing what kind of caliber in terms of competitiveness Faizan brings to the table, to the tracks. I'd expect him to close that gap even without a safety car. I like to think, I like to hope, I like to hope for it to happen that way. Battles at the back, Sicknig and Faizan. Now I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it all. It's Sicknick right now, having lost that position to Big Man Joe, who's been on the mediums, so credit there for him, of course. He's had the stronger tire in that battle. Nothing to take away from Sicknick, who's unfortunately got a time penalty and is losing time to Faizan. Okay, rear kicks out considerably, and that is Big Man Joe heading straight into the pits after 10 laps on the mediums. And clearly held up Sicknick for quite a bit. Quite a bit. Into the pits, fresh set of tires. You can see it is the white-walled hard tires that get on to the Alfa Romeo. Across the final corner comes Faizan, having lost quite a bit of time in that incident between himself and Big Man Joe. He is now running P5 right behind Big Man Joe, so much so. Okay, he won't be close enough to attempt to move, but he is the closest competitor at least to Big Man Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the halfway mark of this race. On lap number 11, as Levi Tiger Pants leads this race, having started on pole position. Envy running P2 after quite a bit of fierce battles in this race alone. Sicknick has a 3-second time penalty to his name and is running in P3 after an opportunistic move of sorts, perhaps not a move, just an opportunity that came his way, pretty much invited to getting P3. Goes to show why you need to pick your battles smartly. Regardless, hopefully Sicknick can do some sort of damage limitation and ensure that gap between himself and the other driver is beyond 3 seconds and rendering that time penalty useless. Heading into the pits right now is Sicknick. After all, Big Man Joe, however, having pitted, will stay out on track. Unusual here, Sicknick is first of the hard runners who completed about 11 laps on the hard tires to head into the pits. Having seen Big Man Joe do 11 laps on mediums, he is hoping he can do something similar on the mediums as well. Faizan picks up the fastest lap time as you'd expect in the Aston Martin, and out of the pits come Sicknick. Now Faizan is probably going to be in attacking range soon. You know, just over a second's gap between these two, and same with Big Man Joe as well. So it's a matter of, you know, who's going to be quicker to certain parts of the track and who's not. The race goes on as Faizan now within a second of another competitor after quite some time. After about 5 laps or so, he finds himself running P5 at the back of the small grid we have today, but within a second of Sicknick. So I'd like to think he has the air of DRS, but going into sector 1, whether he does or doesn't will be a question that gets answered soon enough. Make that beyond a second after all between Faizan and Sicknick. Into the pits goes our race leader, Levi Tiger Pants, for the first time this race. So he's gonna have a fresh set of yellow walled medium tires. So he comes two laps after Sicknick had made that pit stop in Envy. He's gonna be on full mode push on this lap ahead of heading into the pits himself. Now, folks, on lap number 14, the tables seemingly have turned, with Big Man Joe having attacked Sicknick time and time again on track with that tire advantage. This time around, it's Sicknick down the inside of Big Man Joe, making the pass well before the main straight itself on Sector 3. A clinical move on Sector 3, as you'd imagine, but Big Man Joe's not going to give up without a fight, almost going into the rear of the Red Bull there. And not too far behind, but how long before those mediums start falling off? I'd say quite a bit of time as Envy heads into the pits. Levi Tiger Pants retakes the lead of this race. And Envy is coming out right in the thickness of the mix, the thickness of a battle ensuing between Big Man Joe and Sicknick. It's going to be Envy with another driver out on track with an advantage in tires compared to Big Man Joe and Faizan. And right now, as they go through Eau Rouge, Big Man Joe is closing in, steaming through Sector 1, closing in on the Red Bull racing car. Red Bull racing car moves to the right hand side of the track, trying to disconnect, as I say, or even just deny Slipstream as much as he can, but fails to make the move around the outside. Big Man Joe, can he thrive in Sector 2 just as much as Levi has while running behind some of the cars out on track? He just might be able to, but once again, Big Man Joe has his hands full. It's not only a competitor in sights, but it's a competitor right behind, pretty much on top of his gearbox, and it is Envy who's come out of the pits on a fresh set of mediums, ready, raring to go, trying to make this pass because his fight is properly with Levi Tiger Pants if you think about it. And Big Man Joe's not gonna make it easier, folks. It is all to play for here in the Bwoah Racing League Season 7 Belgian GP. We're on lap number 15. Levi Tiger Pants leads this race, and here comes Envy around the outside of the Alfa Romeo driver, and he's gonna pick him off through Sector 3, much like Sicknick did onto Big Man Joe. And Big Man Joe tucks right behind for some slipstream, almost going into the back of the AlphaTauri driver into the penultimate and final corner, that chicane a Spa. And it is Sicknick ahead of Envy, ahead of Big Man Joe. And once again in Sector 1, this time around Sicknick at a disadvantage of sorts, because Envy clearly getting into the groove with the mediums around the outside well before the corner, perhaps level pegging or wheel to wheel pretty much, but the nose is in front, the whole car is in front, and Sicknick loses the P2 position to Envy, who's made his way through out of the pits through Big Man Joe and Sicknick, and running P2 once again with a 7-second gap to Levi Tiger Pants. Alright folks, now on lap number 17, Levi Tiger Pants leads this race, having started from pole position ahead of Envy, Siknik, Big Manjo and Faizan. The shortest gap between two competitors is Siknik and Big Manjo. And you've got two of the drivers, both Siknik and Faizan, with time penalties, 3 seconds each. So things are clearly getting interesting on lap number 17 with the mere 5 laps to go. It's anyone's guess who can finish on top of the podium, get that final podium place in particular. You can see Big Manjo closing that gap, or attempting to close that gap to Siknik. It's a seconds gap so far. It's gone well beyond a second, in fact. And it's been continuing in that direction. Mind you, that's mainly because Siknik has a significant advantage with those yellow medium tires compared to Big Manjo's hard tires. Now, they've gone on to the hard with an attempt to, or with a hope of sorts, that players on the opponent team, or players who usually go or start off with the mediums, or end up or wrap up with the mediums, in fact, will have a disadvantage at the tail end of this race. But for that, you need to keep that gap as small as possible. As much as Big Man Joe's trying, it remains a second or 1.2, whereas the other drivers, the gaps are just extended well beyond means of sorts. You can see Envy and Levi Tiger Pants, and 7 seconds between them, and right now it's 8.4 seconds. And we got a retirement just like that. Might have just missed it. Unfortunate there, but that is Sicknick's race ended in the entrance of Sector 3. Would you look at that? He had a 3-second time penalty after multiple warnings, and just like that, he's lost it. Not with no other car involved in that incident. That is the end of the race on lap number 20 for Sicknick as Faizan heads into the pits. He is going to go for that last lap, fastest lap attempt by the looks of it. And with that, folks, we are on the penultimate lap of this race. Levi Tiger Pants leads this race ahead of Envy, Big Man Joe, and Faizan. For those of you who tuned in during the live stream, thank you very much. I know it's been a difficult race to watch given the smaller grid and the huge gaps between drivers. Nevertheless, it is sim racing, and this is what we're here for. Hopefully we can populate the grid heading into the next race. I'll be putting the effort. If you're tuning in, make sure you spread the word. Get your friends in if they haven't already, and if they're looking for some sim racing action after all, they might as well come race in the Bwoah Racing League. Right now, however, things seem as you'd expect them to seem. 5-car grid, 4 cars finishing, 1 car in the lead with a 10-second gap. Car number 2, Envy, running P2. As you'd imagine, 9-second gap to Big Man Joe, and 20 seconds the gap between Big Man Joe and Faizan as it stands. Now, we start off with 5 drivers. You've got 4 drivers with Levi Tiger Pants starting the last lap soon enough. Let's stay on board. We can consider this his victory lap of sorts. Get this out of the way. Gaps will not close. Will they? With that, there's Levi Tiger Pants starting the last lap. Envy to follow. Big Man Joe coming across the final corner as well, starting the final lap. And Faizan in his first race of the Bwoah Racing League will be in the top 4. Would you look at that? Considering it was a 5-car grid, he does finish ahead of another driver. But if there's one thing we've noticed from Faizan from this race, is the fact that he clearly has a skill. He's a competitor through and through. You can see he is ambitious as much as he is audacious to send it down the inside of turn 1. Clearly holds on to his pace pretty well, and he reminds me of an SV11 of the past, if I may say, a much quicker SV11 of the past. Nevertheless, it's always a treat to see and welcome a brand new driver into the Bwoah Racing League. He's raced here before Faizan, and he is racing once again, first time this season, and we're looking forward to have him here once again, get behind the wheel of one of the cars in a race here in the Bwoah Racing League. Of course, for those of you tuning in who are watching later, thank you very much for watching till the very end for the Bwoah Racing League Season 7 Belgian GP. Of course, the race hasn't ended, but this is the final lap, and given the gaps of each one of these cars, given the grid itself, a 5-car grid turned 4-car cars to finish as he comes along the penultimate lap, as clinical as he could have gotten it. Pole in the one-shot quali, pole in the sprint race, wins the sprint race, and now comes across the line to win the Belgian GP of the Bwoah Racing League Season 7. Levi Tiger Pants goes 3 for 3 for now in this season. He's won 3 races in Season 7, and what a way to start off. And continue, in fact, if you think about it. And he's gonna keep on keeping on, if anything. As Envy comes across the line, he finishes on the podium as you'd expect, P2, and Big Man Joe wraps up the podium in P3 as Faizan, in his first race of the Bwoah Racing League Season 7, comes across the line to finish P4. While the second half of the race wasn't as entertaining as the first half, I hope the folks watching had a good time watching 5 drivers battle it out around Spa. Envy, however, picking up that driver of the day, rightfully deserved. He battled it out to his maximum capability out on track. Of course, as always, that ends our race here in the Bwoah Racing League this Sunday. Of course, on the top step of the podium is Levi Tiger Pants, rightfully deserved. as he receives that trophy. But that's the end of the race here today, folks. Those of you who tuned in during the live stream, thank you very much once again. Those of you who watch it later on, thank you for taking time out and watching our races as always. We're going to come out with more updates. To stay updated, of course, tune into our other social channels on X, on Instagram. Of course, jump into our Discord if you are interested in competing or getting behind the mic alongside me in the cons box. And with that, folks, see you again next weekend ahead of race number 8 of the Bwoah Racing League Season 7.